This meeting is being recorded by the Appointment and Ordinance Committee. If any others present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Anyone else? All right. Roll call. Let me pull up the sheet. Councillor Gwynn is not here at the moment. Councillor Gilmore, I'm present. Councillor Jarvis.
Here.
Councillor Dolan.
Here.
Councillor Elmer.
Here.
Okay, great.
Point of order. There's a quorum of city council here.
Mm-hmm. So it's a public meeting and it's being recorded. I mean, do we need? I think we get to continue.
We shouldn't all be participating. We can't have my understanding is a quorum of councilors cannot participate in this meeting at the same time. And I'll be speaking. I was invited. I'm comfortable speaking as called on by the members of the committee, but not in participating with a conversation with 7 or more councilors.
Yes. So I'm stepping in for 1 second. Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Forgy, during chairs, I invited you both to be here. So you two may speak in A&O, no one else for councilors. Okay, including myself. Thank you.
All right. So first on the agenda, we have Article 2, Legislative Branch. But if I remember correctly, we had gone through that one with a fine-tooth comb already. So are we moving on to Article 3?
Point of order.
Go ahead.
We should maybe accept the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the agenda. I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. I skipped over that. So do we have a motion to accept the minutes from August 11th?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so that is unanimous. Public hearings, there are none. Motions and discussion items. Mayor's appointment, Gretchen Green. Did everyone have a chance to look at Gretchen Green for the Crossroads Cultural District? Or would we rather wait till the chair arrives?
No, let's just get it out of the way.
All right. Would you like to make that a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that we send a positive recommendation to the city council for the position.
Second.
Great. Do I have a second?
Yep.
Sorry, was that you, Dolan?
Yep.
Councillor Dolan seconded. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, now we can get to, I was too excited about this. All right. So Article 2, we've already gone through, correct? So we're going to move on to Article 3, or did we have stuff with Article 2 we needed to revisit?
My understanding is that we don't have language proposed for anything but the 2 that are attached. Is that correct?
So my recollection was that we had sent some things to full council and that got tabled.
Right.
And I would have to bounce back between different documents to see what that is. If you want to bear with me just a moment, I can pull that up.
If I could interject,
Sure.
we did discuss one at full council and voted on it. All the others were tabled because the lawyer hadn't vetted them yet.
Right. That's correct. All right. I'm going to pull up a second screen so I can look at both of those at the same time. Is there anyone who remembers offhand how far into Article 2 we ended up getting?
Chris Forgy has her hand up.
Yeah, go ahead.
If it's okay, basically we ended at 2.8, and it was 2.8B, which was the city clerk. So I think that's where the new discussion begins. And Yeah, I don't know, President Ricketts, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but the other items already went to the lawyer, and I think we heard back. I don't know if the whole council did or anything else, that the lawyer has approved, and it's on our, going to be on our agenda on our council meeting for the other items that the lawyer approved of. Those will be on our council meeting for us to deliberate on. Okay. 28B.
All right, so Counselor Forgy, my understanding is you're going to go through this one with more of a fine-tooth comb with us, correct?
I'm here. I'm here to just answer questions, and if there's language questions, you and Otis were also participated in this. So if you call on us to help you with language or to ask us questions about what went on in Charter Committee, I would feel comfortable with that role.
Okay, that sounds good. I was trying to replicate what we had done last time. Are there any counselors that have questions about this one in particular? Well, I'm pulling my second screen up here.
I have questions about the process. Am I correct that we don't have language changes before us on the majority of these?
Well, could I interject?
That's
Yes,
up to
go
the
ahead.
chair.
Yeah, on 2.8, there's the language, whether it's appoint, vote to appoint, or elect. That's a language change. And then there's a footnote at the bottom about suggesting some language about the city clerk shall appoint a qualified person. Do you see that?
Actually, I'm still pulling it up.
Okay, it's on page 14. Page 13 and 14 is section 2.8 in the
I think this one's straightforward enough. I'm concerned about going through these one by one because we don't have specific language for a lot of them.
Could I speak?
Please do.
I think there's a discrepancy going on in general. The council is interpreting the Charter Committee's report to be proposed. It seems to be taking the recommended changes as proposed changes and not requiring a counselor to sponsor them. That's my understanding of what's going on. It was not my experience on the Charter Committee that was intended to be the case, but that is my understanding of what's happening here.
could you restate that? Are you saying we're not following the procedure that you guys had in mind? What was the procedure that you had in mind?
The procedure, as it was explained multiple times, as we understood it during Charter Committee, and this was just the understanding that we were discussing, was that a report would be given to City Council, and it would be up to individual City Councilors to propose or decline to propose individual amendments.
Go ahead, Counselor Forgy, go ahead and jump in.
I guess I don't have that interpretation of this. Our committee, the Charter Committee, worked to address some of the issues, to decide based on public input and deliberation what we wanted to have included in the charter report, and it was included. A lot of the language changes are housekeeping items like gender neutral corrections and things of that nature. Other pieces were pieces that did require a lot of discussion. The council made its recommendation. Not the council, I'm sorry, the Charter Commission made its recommendation. It's gone out to charter. Everybody, the council accepted the charter report. Then it was sent to A and O. So A and O could make recommendations on what was contained in the report. And as Article 1 and 2 and 7, which is another article that we have, that was vetted, went back out to the attorney, and now those pieces of the charter are ready to go on council floor, where council can deliberate those pieces.
Thank you. That was my understanding also.
If I may, just one more thing.
Yes.
I think if there's something in there that people have a specific interest in and the report didn't address it correctly, or if it's asking for a significant change to the charter, or if it's stating that we couldn't make up, we were not able to make a decision on this particular piece, then I think something like that would need a counselor to sponsor it. So, for instance, if you're looking to have a discussion about whatever it is you want, let's pick assessors. You want to have a discussion about that, and it's going to cause the language change. It's very important for the council to be able to discuss it and deliberate on it to decide what the final language should look like.
Yes.
Does that make any sense?
That makes sense to me. And I also feel like, you know, having been, now I'm in the second phase of this process, I feel like the Charter Committee made some recommendations. That doesn't mean the A&O can't make additional recommendations. If there's a particular article in here that someone is concerned about, that they feel maybe the committee members didn't do their due diligence on, where this is the place to talk about that as well. But I think the way the agenda is organized is based on the recommendations that have already been made. Not that we aren't open to others. Does that sound fair to the other counselors who are on the committee with me?
Okay, so
my concern is procedural. I've never in my time as a counselor seen an ordinance change, let alone a charter change, come through without a counselor willing to speak for it and kind of shepherd it through the process. These are also not in the form of motions. And I just noticed on our agenda, there's a section called motions and discussion items, which usually those are broken in two. So I'm not clear if these are supposed to be motions or if we're just in a discussion phase. I would very much prefer to wait until we have leadership from the chair on this and we can confirm what the process is.
I think that that's fine. My understanding from committee chairs is that we wanted everything on the agenda that could possibly come up, because we didn't want to violate open meeting law by discussing an item that maybe a counselor was interested in, because if it's not posted on the agenda within so many days of us having the meeting, then the public isn't aware that we're going to be taking that up. But I think at this point, we don't have to make any motions. If we want to wait until Councilor Gwynn comes back, I'm fine with that. But I think that it is worth going through, because we don't know what time he's going to be logging in. I think it is worth it to go through and see if people have any thoughts or questions on the section that we're looking at now. And I'm going to mislabel it if I don't look here. So that would be 2-8.
I'm looking at that now. Changing a point to elect or vote to appoint that seems like not a big thing. But there is a suggestion on page 14 that an ordinance be passed to solve this ambiguity about who the city clerk works for. I'm not sure what to do with that. Is that something?
Okay. That was something that we had talked about, and it was a recurring theme on that committee. So when you change the charter, in theory, people aren't gonna, I mean, we can make little ad hoc changes here and there, and we've seen that in the past. But we're not going to go through this with a fine-tooth comb again for another 10 years. So one of the suggestions, and I think that David Singer was the first person to bring it up, is that in some cases, the charter can refer to an ordinance, and then the ordinance can be edited and amended as needed. If things no longer suit our needs in 2 or 3 years, because things have changed, we don't want to change the entire charter, but we can go through and change that ordinance if necessary. And I think this was one of those areas where he was talking about maybe we would govern this by ordinance instead of having it spelled out in the charter. That way, if we needed some flexibility, it's there for us. Does that make sense?
Chris has her hand up.
Oh, go ahead. Councilor Forgy, go ahead.
Okay. So the whole idea behind a 10-year review of the charter is that it is the council's function to review the charter. And there was an appointment made of the council review committee, and the appointments were made by the council president and the mayor. So it was an agreement that this would happen. The way I review that, the way I read that and everything else is because it's council function and because there was council representation on the original charter committee that put this report together to send back to council, we've already been involved in the first process of charter change. I'm not understanding the point that every line, every word has to be sponsored because we already put a collective committee together to do the hard work for the council. And that report has some standing in regard to it representing what the council's input was to it. I understand that if you are going to deal with an ordinance that has to be sponsored, I understand that. I understand that a charter change needs to be sponsored. I get that as well. However, no one on here, myself included, has gone through a charter change, a 10-year charter review. So I do think that this is procedurally a different type of item than what we're reading on what we're reading in the charter in regard to meetings, motions, and things of that nature.
So I have a compromise if it would make people feel more comfortable. I would be happy to sponsor all of these changes as a member of ANO and as a member of the committee. Excuse me a moment. I just talked to my son about. Can you not burp when I'm on Zoom? Go. I'm sorry.
So the issue with that, Councilor Gilmore, is it will work on page 13 and it might work on page 14, but it's not going to work on page 16 where there's a big substantive issue and no clear recommendation. And that's something that goes through several parts of the document. Like, I'm not comfortable really moving forward unless there is a motion before us with clear language that's tangible in some way.
Okay. Are you talking about Article 3 where we're talking about any voter?
Yeah.
Yes. So this
I have
is already
something-
on the council floor right now. The reason why this became important is because we started talking about the idea that a non-resident alien could also register to vote in municipal elections. And what we needed to, the reason this is marked is because if that information changes in Article 1, which is the definitions, it's going to have an impact on Article 3. So that's why this is vague, and that's why there's no recommendation here. This is just flagged so that we know that when we change one piece, it's going to have an effect on other pieces.
Could I say something about 3.1?
Yeah.
I'm really sorry that we forwarded this to the council. I think it opens up the possibility to have a really ugly conversation in public.
I think I think I agree with you, but it was something that we did discuss on the committee, and it wouldn't be right to act like we didn't discuss it.
Okay.
But Article 3 is not, well, I know what you mean. I'm splitting hairs right now. Yeah. So Article 3 is not going to be an ugly discussion. It's just if Article 1 becomes an ugly discussion, Article 3 would be changed at that point.
I'm sorry, I'm not following your numbering scheme here. We're talking about 3.1a, right?
Yeah, so Article 3 is talking about, so 3.1, they're talking about who's qualified to run for mayor, and it has to be any registered voter who lives in Greenfield. If we change that definition in Article 1 and we allow a non-resident alien to vote, we would have to consider whether we want a non-resident alien to be eligible to run for mayor, because the way it's worded right now, they would be eligible to do that. So it's just something that maybe, and so maybe 3.1 is something that we want to table that one until we know what's going on with Article 1, because that might require some language changes. And that's one that we should be taking up at the next full council meeting, I believe.
May I speak? This is
Sure.
Councilor Wheeler.
Yep.
I do want to jump in to defend the process because this is where it becomes important. The recommendation around the resident alien piece did not even come close to having majority or necessarily even minority support on the charter committee. And so that's a reason why I agree with Councilor Elmer that it should not be proposed at this time. And it should, like all of these changes, require a sponsoring counselor, because you need someone. The way that the committee worked, and I understand that I'm in disagreement with fellow charter committee members on this, but I think we could consult the minutes or certainly the recordings. The way that the committee worked was to forward this work that had been done with the understanding that counselors would further and would use their judgment and discretion to move forward items that deserved to be moved forward in their judgment, and not to move on other items. And I disagree with the interpretation that the Charter Committee was a subcommittee of the council, because it was a 7-member body with only 3 counselors on it. And so I don't understand how you could interpret that to be a subcommittee of the council. That said, I've said my piece on that, and I'm not going to repeat myself.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I am here to answer questions.
Well, I think that you're right, but I think that what we can also do is we can move forward with a negative recommendation, but I think that it's worth reading into the record that these are the things that we discussed, and rather than, I wouldn't want us to skip a part.
If I may, I'm simply agreeing with Councilor Dolan that there is a reason for process, and it's because the process requires certain notices given to the public that are read by the public and by newspapers, press, etc. If you skip one piece of the process, i.e. the act of officially proposing a charter change so that it is sent to all counselors, it is part of the public record, and your name is on it. If you skip that, you're skipping all of the notice periods, the opportunity for all counselors to be aware that this is officially being sponsored by you and being put forward, and the opportunity for the community to be part of this conversation. So by taking this charter committee's report as one entire recommendation for A&O to deal with, we're essentially starting a conversation that's too big for the community to have right now, that should be managed by the judgment and discretion of individual counselors behind the scenes, and then the pieces that they feel strongly about, they should move forward, and they should speak to them, and we should listen to their thoughts and their defenses, and move on each individual item. There's an enormous amount of work that we all put in to the crafting the charter committee report, but it was only the beginning. And I think to consider it the end, or at least, or even a later step in the process than it actually was, I think it does it a disservice. So I do believe that you as counselors and as the A&O committee have the discretion to move forward on this as you see fit. So I'm only registering my recommendation as a charter committee member and a counselor, that I agree with Councilor Dolan that it should go through individual proposals from counselors. Thank you.
Okay, so in the meantime, I think it is important for us to continue to review these recommendations and ask questions so that we know what we're getting ourselves into when we make a recommendation. And I know we were just talking about 3-1, but if we want to go back up to 2-8, because I don't feel like we really did this one much justice. I know that Councilor Elmer mentioned the difference between an election and an appointment is, you know, in practice, probably not a very big difference, but, you know, we need to make sure that we're not setting we don't want to be setting anybody up for failure. So is there anyone who has questions for either Councilor Forgy, Councilor Wheeler, or myself about the conversation that we had, or do other folks have thoughts on 2-8? Councilor Elmer?
Yeah, if you could just clarify, what was the sense of the committee? Did you prefer vote to appoint or elect? And is the message we're getting in the footnote that you'd like to leave it the way, have this new language that's in italics be added as an ordinance, so it's not something we have to discuss now? I'm not sure what was the intention of the committee.
Yeah, this one was really difficult, but because I think that the city clerk is often put into this like push me, pull you kind of relationship where if the council president and the mayor both demands their attention at the same time, who does the clerk really report to when it comes down to brass tacks?
Okay,
And that's
point of order. Where are we? Where are
I'm
we?
sorry,
2-8
we're on
or
2-8.
that's
2-8.
oh
A, I
D.
think that A. Okay.
That's
2
actually about the
okay.
auditor.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was looking at D. I apologize.
Oh, okay. 2-8A is what we're talking about.
I apologize. I was
That's
looking at
okay.
page
Just
14.
so we're all on the same page.
And I have to.
Now we're all on page 13 now, right?
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right.
I can jump in on 2-8. There, you know, it really, what it says there, it was a member suggested the word elect. Another member suggested vote to appoint. There was no consensus. I myself don't think it matters, actually. But if any of you counselors feel strongly, then I'd say move forward with any of those options.
My sense, if I could, is that if it doesn't matter, then it isn't broken, and maybe we should just leave it the way it is.
I think that those are wise words. And I think that with past practice, we do vote to appoint. I don't think, I mean, someone would have to get very, very bureaucratic to try and change the definition there. Does anyone
I
have
disagree
strong feelings
actually,
opposed?
because
Okay.
there are many places where the council president appoints an officer. It happened with the public housing or the affordable housing ad hoc committee. It happens in a number of different places. I would argue that this is actually unclear, the current language.
Okay. So if you wanted to make a motion to say, you know, elect or may vote to appoint, I would entertain a motion. Or do
I
we
mean,
want to
just-
do we want to discuss this more before anyone makes a motion?
I would support vote to appoint if that makes a difference.
Do I have a second?
Tim?
I'm not 100% sure what I having not been part of the process. Again, this is me putting my name on it, and I'm looked at this for the first, for the second time today. I'm not sure that I want to push these through the process without further discussion.
Okay. So, all right, so let's talk it through then. So, my reading is that the city council may appoint means that it's the body, not the president. But I would not be opposed to saying that the city council may vote to appoint or elect, because then you're making it very clear that it's the body. So I don't see that as being a substantive enough change that I would be concerned. I don't think I can second a motion because I'm chairing the meeting. But I think the only way that it would be clearly that the council president does it would say the city council president. But I'm also, I'm willing to close up the loophole too.
If I'll jump in just because it's quiet, I agree with Councilor Gilmore that in the absence of language specifying otherwise, I think you would interpret this to be that the council votes to appoint. And in practice, that has been what has happened. I mean, the last city auditor that was appointed, I, as then chair of Ways and Means, met with the finance director, and we got proposals from, I believe, 2 or 3 different auditors, and I proposed the one that, after discussions, we thought was the best, and council voted on it. So I guess I would agree with what Councilor Elmer said, that the process isn't broken. So I think it works.
So I see 3 options here. I think we can either move on and not weigh in on this. We can entertain another motion if someone is willing to make one, or we can, if we want to discuss this further. Councilor Elmer?
I'm willing to make a motion that we leave it as is.
Do I have a second?
I don't think we
Second,
need a
Jarvis.
motion for that. Either way,
Then you could second it.
I think Councilor Jarvis did.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Okay. Is there anybody who is opposed to leaving this language as is? Okay. And we can always revisit this if we need to. But moving on, now we're on the page where I thought we were on.
Vote?
Sorry?
Should we vote since the motion was made and seconded?
Well, I was thinking of that as not really much of a motion, but if you'd like, then okay. So all in favor of leaving this language as originally written in the charter for section 2.8, paragraph A. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we are moving on. Okay. Now, D, this is where I started kind of getting up on my soapbox about, the push me, pull you. Did anybody want more clarification on this? Did anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If the city council writes an ordinance along the lines or exactly like the italic section there, the city clerk shall appoint, does that take care of all the problems that we're seeing with the confusion about who the clerk is reports to?
Well, it would be lovely if it did, but I doubt, unless you have a perfect piece of legislation, and I don't know if that exists. I think that what we were talking about here, as far as ordinances go, is that ordinances can be modified if it turns out that 2 years down the road, you realize it's just not working. it's easier to change an ordinance than it is to change the charter. But that doesn't mean that we as a committee can't say, nope, this needs to be in the charter. We don't have to agree with every recommendation of the charter committee. We can say, no, this really, really needs to be addressed in the charter. Or we can say, no, this makes sense that we would address this with an ordinance.
Chris has her hand up.
Sorry, go ahead, Councilor Forgy. I can't see everybody at the same time. So if there's a moment of silence, feel free to jump in as long as it doesn't become chaotic.
Yeah. I think my recollection, and I'm going to ask Otis and you, Sheila, to kind of think about this. There's a big footnote, and a lot of discussion that goes on around what in general law governs the clerk, what in Massachusetts law governs the clerk, and what in our charter governs the work. And there was obviously a lot of discussion around there, because if you see the size of the footnote that's attached here, even though it's not attached to B, it is attached to C, where they talk about clerk of the council, who is the city clerk. So there's a lot of information in this. And there was really, there was sort of a discussion from what I remember about Kathy, our clerk now, being able to appoint somebody else who can clerk to us. But I do believe that, and I think and please, if I misspeak, please let me know. I think that there is this necessity here to get this as clear as possible, because it's a difficult position and it really needs to be defined. And to follow back on what Councillor Dolan was saying, this is probably one of the cases in which a councillor should sponsor this and bring it forward. It can be modified through ordinance, but it really needs to be set forth and codified in council. And this might be the exact example that everybody's talking about, and I agree with that. This is something that that really needs to make it to council floor with a full-blown discussion.
Yeah, I would, if I may,
Yes.
I would agree with Councillor Forgy that this was something where the charter committee really worked on it up to the end and kind of just ran out of time and ran out the clock and thought this needs more discussion. And so it's something that the council, along with the mayor, should be discussing with the clerk present. The language that is in italics there about appointing a qualified person, as you know, that effectively is Tammy now. So that wouldn't actually change anything. I think that suggested language was more about codifying a practice that's already in place. But the piece about clarifying certain aspects of the clerk's supervision should have a conversation, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah, and
Councilor Dolan?
I want to go back to some of the process stuff, if you'll indulge me.
Sure.
It feels like we're trying to rush through these, and this is a case where if this were an ordinance proposed in a normal A&O meeting, we would have the clerk available, we would have commentary from the mayor, we would have a full discussion, we would entertain perhaps different options and different versions of the language. And I know that we have a lot of changes before us, but I think they all, maybe aside from the basic housekeeping items, they all merit that extended discussion.
Oh, absolutely.
So
And this one I think really is one that rises to that level where we're making a decision in the very, very near future that's going to affect like a third of somebody's life, right? If you think
So I
about
guess
40 hours a week, right?
my question is, so what are we doing here tonight?
I think right now we're
I-
just having the conversation. I mean, I don't think this is something that we should vote on tonight. I think that, and actually what I would like to see is if there's a counselor who would be willing to sort of take this on, if we decide we want to deal with this via charter change or via ordinance, if there is someone who wants to take this on and start doing some of that research by talking to Clark Scott, and figuring out all of the areas where this could possibly fail so that we can make it as fail-proof as possible, I think that's the best we're going to get done tonight. I know we do have a well, I know President Ricketts said that she didn't want to speak just because of quorum reasons, but we do have a former mayor in our midst, and I don't know what your experience has been as far as sharing the clerk with the council. I don't know. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I feel like you're the best person who can kind of give us a 360 view. Is this something that you feel comes up pretty frequently, Councilor Forgy, or do you think this is just something that comes up once in a blue moon?
I don't want to get into a deliberation piece. I want to be very conscious of that. So this, if you will allow me, I will speak to the history of it, if that is appropriate. When the council was first formed, there was a distinct separation between the executive branch and the legislative branch. And the charter language, I do not believe any of this charter language has been changed since then, but this charter language was strictly interpreted and it was put in place so that the practice at the time was that the city council, the city clerk was the chief administrator of the council. And council president would have, is an equivalent elected position, although it doesn't get paid as much. It's electorally speaking, it is an elected position that politically retains the same weight as the mayor, because that person is sitting as the head of the legislative group, elected group. My personal experience from this, when I was mayor, and the clerk at the time was Maureen Winsek. The clerk belonged, I don't want to say belonged, that sounds like that's not the right word. The clerk
Answered to?
no, it's more like the clerk's authority was unique, and in answer to, maybe Phil is the better term as well. It was unique, and I never treated the city clerk as a department head of the city in regard to the other department heads in the city. It was a standalone, and it was very important that it maintained that distinction. And then the supervisory positions, again, going back historically, who supervises the person? If ever there was a disagreement or somebody was unhappy, it would involve the council president. And I do think that this has devolved over the years. And I do think that it requires a very discreet counting of this clerk and the clerk's position, and keeping it separate as much as possible from the day-to-day operation and everything else as supervisory. I feel very strongly about that. I also feel that for whatever reason at this point, we are discussing this. This has now been 20 years almost since the charter. And there's been 3 mayors, and there's been totally different experiences in each one of those offices. And a lot of it has to do with the people that are not only the clerks, but the people that are the mayor. I don't think you can ever avoid having personalities involved, but I do think that if there can be a discrete understanding of what city clerk is, who he or she reports to, who is responsible for advocating for them, who is responsible if there's a disciplinary issue. Again, this person has been assigned by charter to the city council. Otherwise, there would not be a discrete, again, here's that word, there would not be a separation of these powers and authority. And so I see this as a keystone piece based on the history of it. The wording and what councilors decide to do with it at this point is up to, the council and what goes forward after this. But historically speaking, looking back on this, the integrity of all of this, I think, needs to be maintained. And I think that in reality, if you're working for the council and the brunt of your work is, I get it, I understand, and you're working for the Board of Elections, and again, that's independent from the mayor and the council, I think this particular position warrants a little bit more independence in regard to the administrative piece of the government. Sorry, I'm long-winded, I'm verbose.
It's fine. I actually had a question, because I know that in some places the city clerk is elected not by the city council but by the general public.
Correct.
Is that true anywhere in Massachusetts, do we know of?
It used to be true in Greenfield. It was an
Okay.
elected position when we had a board of selectmen, and the selectmen appointed a finance committee. The city clerks were elected. Janice
Okay, but not
Prescott.
any-
Janice Prescott was our, if I'm not mistaken, was our last elected clerk. Everything became appointed when we changed to the city form of government.
Okay, thank you.
Could I say something?
Yes.
The language is very clear that the clerk works for the council until you get to removal/suspension, because the procedures for that is something that the mayor has a hand in. Also, because the mayor negotiates the salary, the council doesn't have a budget to pay a clerk. So it seems like it would be possible to have the mayor negotiate a salary, but the council retain the hiring and firing of it. That would be one way to sort of navigate the problem that we have. Was that suggested in the?
Well, I don't think that the mayor has I don't think the mayor has the authority to remove or suspend the clerk, because if you look at 3-4, the mayor may in writing remove or suspend any city officer or the head of any city department appointed by the mayor.
Oh.
That's how I see it.
Well, then,
And actually the mayor has to go through the clerk to get it done. So if you're suspending the clerk, you have to file with the clerk to suspend the clerk, right? Yeah.
oh, then it is procedures substantially the same as those contained in 3-4B. That's the language that I interpreted that the mayor could
Right.
remove them.
But it says any person elected by the city council may be removed or suspended by the city council with the same procedures. But yeah, again, so we would also, if something crazy were to happen, because I don't think Clerk Scott would do anything like that. But I don't know. Maybe she hits her head, and I don't know.
So
if something had to,
your interpretation of D is that does not give the mayor the power to fire.
my interpretation of D is that the procedure is the same, but it's the city council who does it.
Well, then the big footnote that's right below that talks about the discussion you had, and about there seemed to be some confusion about who was the employer of the city council, of the city clerk.
Right.
Can we just agree? I mean, it's possible to interpret the language as it is now, that the city council, only the city council can remove the clerk, and that the only role that the mayor has is negotiating the salary, because the mayor has the budget and we don't.
Right. And I think that that's where the tension comes in, because the mayor has like certain levers of power that the council doesn't. And also, you know, if the clerk needs one example that came up, a very benign example, who approves their vacation time, right? I mean, those of us who have other things that we're doing during the day, maybe we have, you know, full-time jobs, or maybe we're retired and we have full-time hobbies, or, you know, what have you, don't know the daily operations of City Hall. So it does make sense that the mayor would approve something like vacation time or any kind of extended absence.
I hear you. I mean, they work in the same building. They know what the issues are.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean that we have to give up, that the legislature has to give up some powers to the mayor because she chooses vacation times, approves vacation times.
Right. And I don't think that that's what anyone was suggesting. I think that, and please, you know, Chris and Otis, if you want to weigh in, I feel like what we were talking about is that this is important. There is room for error, and this error can really affect a person's life. And we need to make sure that we do our due diligence to provide as much safety and security and clarity as possible.
Well, if I could, I'm coming around to something someone said a lot earlier, that it seems like a thorough discussion of the issues would be helpful to have the clerk and the mayor in the room.
I agree. Is this something that maybe we would want to table to a future meeting and move on with some other, maybe we have some housekeeping items that we can take care of, or do we want to talk about this some more tonight?
Ed's got his
So,
hand up.
Ed,
Oh, go ahead and jump in.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think we need to move past this. I think this is a very in-depth conversation that needs to happen. Needs to happen with the mayor and the city clerk in the office, because you know, quite honestly, I could see where the city clerk could be torn between two different bosses, and sometimes that's tough, sticky wicket sometimes. So I think we need to move past this and have an in-depth conversation with them. I think a counselor needs to kind of bring this forward and take it by the horns. So I think we need to move forward and do some house cleaning items, because we're just gonna go around here. We need to have an in-depth conversation, probably on just one piece.
I agree. I think we could talk about this all night if we wanted to, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to see next on. Where are we? Okay. So next is 3-1, correct? Unless were there other? Okay. I don't know how many people actually took the time to read the parts of the charter that the committee did not make recommendations on. Is there anything else in section 2 that stuck out to someone that they want to bring up for the rest of the group?
Section 2.
Council Gilmore,
Yes.
this Chris Forgy. If you go to page 15, which would be the next page in the report,
Yep.
again, if people want to back me up on this or not, page 15 has there are no changes on page 15 from what exists in the current charter.
Right. I was just wondering if anybody really had any burning desire to look at that.
And you're good until you get past, you're good until you get to Article 3. Then there is another asterisk.
Yeah. And this one, I would suggest that maybe we would have a more productive discussion after we understand what's going on with the definitions in Article 1. But if people want to talk about this one, I'm certainly not going to silence anyone.
No, we have to get past it on Article 1 before it comes up here.
All right. Moving on. I'm now on page 17. Okay, minimum salary expressed to the charter. Okay. I really could go either way on this one as far as C goes. The kind of discussion that we had there was, do we really want to define it in the charter, or should it be defined by ordinance? Because again, with charter not being something that's easy to edit, depending upon, inflation, deflation, whatever, what have you, do we want this defined by ordinance? If people
really
have
like to
strong
know-
thoughts. I'm sorry?
I'd like to know what other cities do.
That's a good point. I don't remember if we discussed that. Does Otis or Chris, do you remember if we discussed what other cities do here?
Yeah, there was a long discussion where, at least one committee member suggested somehow writing in a form of benchmarking, so tying it to what other cities could do. I don't think any of us on the committee knew how to formulate that into language. So, there's a lot of work left to do if you were to propose moving forward on this one, I think.
You want me to keep him up?
Ed's got his hand up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Sheila, with this one, I think we need to have a discussion, and benchmarking. It can also be it can work in your benefit, or it could work against you, because some communities that are the size of Greenfield are better off than Greenfield. We run across this when we try to do it for negotiating. When we were negotiating firefighters' salaries, we were comparing ourselves to other cities and municipalities our size, but they're better off than Greenfield, so the firefighters are getting paid more. Chris can probably shake her head yes or no on this, and we would compare ourselves and say, listen, this is look what these people are making, and it's the same size community as Greenfield, but they're better off than Greenfield. So they can afford to pay their firefighters more. So it would probably be the same thing with their town administrator or mayor. So we have to be careful with if, I think if we benchmark this to communities of comparison, we need to
That's a good
do
point.
apples and oranges with oranges. That's my only concern about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I know that I'm heavily involved with my union at UMass, and we're in bargaining right now, and I know that the people who work at UMass Boston doing the same jobs earn more, because Boston, for one, it's more expensive to live in Boston.
Sure.
So even though we're all state employees, the state is never going to give us what they give Boston. So I think you're right. Maybe benchmarking has something to do with the cost of living or the median income in the town. I don't know.
I have a question.
Yes.
That $70,000 figure, that's been around for 10 years,
20.
20 years.
That's what I earned. Yep.
Yeah. It doesn't seem, I don't think there's much danger that the mayor will get less than 70,000. So I'm just wondering if this is broken.
Right. So the reason that David Singer kind of gave to us was that, you don't want to have a council that's at war with the mayor. and just say, well, you know, the heck with you, we're going to pay you 20,000 and that's going to be your salary. It's to protect people from like political stuff, shenanigans.
I'm going to stop the video while I eat dinner. Sorry. Thank you, Margot.
But Sheila, if I may, it just says the mayor shall receive a minimum. It doesn't say that that's what the mayor shall receive.
Oh, and
It
the
says
mayor
shall
currently,
receive a minimum, but doesn't say that the mayor can't receive 90. If
right.
we
It
have,
actually,
we have a mayor that's been a mayor, a good mayor in another community, just decided to leave and move to Greenfield with 10 years of experience. So you're going to obviously pay that mayor more if you feel that as a city council that it's warrant.
right. And I can tell you, the current mayor makes more than 70,000, so we're not in any danger of that. This is like a floor so that we can't get into like any kind of political sort of battle and just, you know, say, you know, we can't it basically makes it illegal for us to say that the mayor gets no salary, which, you know, some people, politics get dirty sometimes, right? Hopefully not here in Greenfield, but we want to make sure that that never happens.
I'd like to make a case for benchmarking.
Sure.
I think the disadvantage that we get into if we don't is that the really, really qualified people in our community can expect to make, people who would be really good candidates for mayor can probably expect to make a lot more than $70,000 in another industry. And we want to attract good mayoral candidates. So if this person comes into office, it's just a disincentive if you have no idea what your salary is going to be and what you're going to be able to earn and how big of a step down you're probably taking. I think benchmarking makes sense if we can. I would only do it if we find other instances in the Commonwealth. Like, I don't necessarily want to be the pioneers on that, but if we find that there's a system that works somewhere, I'd be in favor of that. I think the race to the bottom approach in terms of salaries is not an effective way to cut costs in general. It just ensures that, you know, we're not competitive in getting the best public servants, and that's good for everybody.
Right. So, but I don't think that this isn't the actual salary. I mean, this is just setting.
But there's no guarantee of any more than that. Like, it's up to, it was. I remember the council voted this when Mayor Wiedegartner came in, and until we voted, she had no guarantee of making more than that. So it's not much to hang your hat on when you're a mayoral candidate that the council may or may not vote your salary higher.
So if that's the case, do we want to change that minimum, or do we want to sort of table this pending further research? Because I don't think I'm hearing a different number per se.
No, and I don't think you're going to. I mean, at this point, I mean, even if you know, I don't know. It's tough to say. I think we can have a long and depth conversation about this. But the way that the proposed language change was receive an annual salary not lower than the benchmark mayoral salaries of other cities of similar size in Massachusetts. Well, what happens if it's less money? We're going to pay because we're similar size. We're going to pay the mayor less than 70. So that's not a guarantee for the mayor either. I think we need to have a figure in there as their minimum salary. And I don't know.
I agree with you, Councilor Jarvis, because I'm seeing this as a minimum so that the council can't punish the mayor by changing their salary if they're upset with them. But I'm not really seeing this as like a race to the bottom because there's plenty of room for expansion. It's like we have a minimum wage in Massachusetts. We don't have a maximum wage, and not everybody in Massachusetts makes minimum wage. And most people you know, I would say most people probably make more than that.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, Tim, I'm sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like the language that we have, but I don't claim to have the answer.
Okay.
And
Do we
the
want to look
suggestion
into
doesn't
this?
seem particularly clear from the commission either.
Yeah. So is this something that we want to look into a little bit further and then move on a little bit further down, or do we want to? I'm wondering if we're circling around an answer now, or if we need to move to something else.
Could I speak?
Yes, please.
I don't hear I don't hear anybody saying that we should raise the minimum salary. But I think if we're gonna if we're gonna postpone this while we look to what what benchmarking would involve, I think we should assign that to somebody. I don't think we can just leave it in the air.
Oh, no, I'm not suggesting that we leave it in the air. What I was suggesting is that we wouldn't forward something to the full council until we have a chance to do our due diligence and do some research.
Right. The question is, who's going to do that research?
Is there anybody who wants to volunteer?
I guess I will, since I raised it.
Oh, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, Councilor Elmer. If you do want to do the research, it would be greatly appreciated.
I'll see what I can find out.
Okay.
Before we move on, Sheila, just one point of
Yes.
this. We should actually think about what we pay our mayor and what we pay our superintendent and what we pay our other department heads and look at what we're paying our mayor. I will say that when I was a deputy fire chief, I was making more than the mayor was.
Oh, yeah.
So we should take a closer look at that, what we're really paying the mayor. We are really paying the mayor probably out of all the department heads and even their second in charges, we're paying the mayor probably $20,000 less, if not a lot more. So maybe, my suggestion is if we want to attract qualified individuals to be mayor, maybe we should shoot for a ceiling of and move it to 90,000 or whatever. I mean, I know what chiefs make. I know what everybody knows what the new superintendent's making. So here's our chief executive officer running the city of Greenfield making $70,000. To me, I would not take that job for $70,000. So it's it's not much more than what so yeah. So maybe we look at it and say maybe the benchmark, we should look to see what other communities are doing and maybe raise that to 90,000 if that seems to be what they're making. To me, $70,000 is real low for what the mayor does.
Okay.
So to me, I really think that we should come to some kind of consensus or figure that's being used out there and pay our mayor really what the starting salary should be for a mayor.
It'd be interesting to know also is what was the historical salary going back? Because obviously, it's going to change with inflation. I wonder if this should be indexed to inflation. After 20 years, 70,000 is worth what now, right?
To put it in context, the city clerk makes almost $70,000, and that's several levels of hierarchy below the mayor. So yeah, it's inadequate for a position like that.
Interesting. Yeah, so it would be good to learn more about this.
What would be the cities that you'd want to be compared to?
My rule is always cities with a mayor council form of government under 40,000 population.
I'll look into that.
Yeah, I think that be careful though, because if you start running into cities where you've got a lot of well-heeled retirees, and you might have a bigger tax base, kind of like Councilor Jarvis brought up earlier. But we can maybe once you get the information and we have the context, maybe that'll be interesting to dive into it.
Okay.
And then So do we want to discuss the further compensation piece right here? Established an annual salary for the mayor, which shall be effective immediately. I feel like those two are very closely related.
Well,
So
that's the piece that we gave the current mayor more money than 70,000. That's where we
right.
sweeten the pot.
So can we treat those two as being connected and then move on to the next topic, or do we want to talk more about this?
Seems like D is okay the way it is, as far as I can tell.
Okay. All right. So in that case, I'm moving on to 3-3, which is on page 18. Okay. Oh, right. This one was the civil service one. Did anybody have any questions about this? So this one I think became important because we recently removed the police officers from civil service. So by referring to civil service law in the charter, it feels kind of out of date. So there was the suggestion that we would say civil service law or other applicable law, which I would be happy to put that motion forward. I don't think I can put a motion forward tonight because I'm chairing, but this one was really just kind of updating the charter to keep up with the times.
I'll put that motion forward to adopt the language that's been suggested.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right. So we can send that part up to the city council. And then the next part, section does not address. And actually, I'm going to have to lean on my colleagues. If Councilors Forgy and Wheeler have a better recollection of this discussion, I would invite them to speak because this is, I don't remember why this went in.
Okay, I'm sorry. Councilor Wheeler had to go to another meeting.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Did you
Councilor
say
Forgy, do you remember? I don't remember this. I don't remember why this made it in here.
Okay, are we still on, I'm sorry, are we still on 3-3?
3-3. So that second bullet, there's the double asterisk.
Right. So it's a proposed, they're proposing to add.
We already voted on this.
No. We were talking about the language where we add civil service and other applicable law. What I'm talking about is the double asterisk right there. It was observed that this section does not address multiple member bodies for which the method of appointment. I don't remember why that came up.
Because we just instituted Community Preservation Committee, and there needed to be some sort of language that addressed the appointments, how that was appointed. So it wouldn't be appointed by civil service law, and it isn't in the charter as well. So how do you appoint members of a multi-member board? And that's what the language was referring to.
Councilor Dolan?
So this is going back to process. This is one of the problems that having things laid out as a motion like helps us get around, because I also thought we were voting on both of those asterisks. The motion wasn't exactly clear.
Would you like to move to reconsider? You voted
Not
in
necessarily.
favor.
I'm fine with both of them. I don't particularly care, but what we're doing is very unclear process wise. And
okay,
I'm not very comfortable with that.
Okay, so if you would like to file a motion to reconsider, you voted on the prevailing side.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'm not putting that motion in.
No. Okay.
I think we just need to, moving forward, we need to make sure that we are handling them at it. There's no confusion at it. I one thought we were just doing
Right.
the single asterisk change on that motion, and that we were going to move on to the second part of it. But Tim's right. There could be confusion because Phil thought that we had voted on the whole thing. So I think procedural wise, Tim is right. We need to address exactly what we're voting on when we vote on it.
Right.
Okay. So I'm happy to. If we want to revote, I'm happy to revote. What my intention was is that we were talking about this single asterisk first because that was a housekeeping issue. If we want to get into the other issue, I'm happy to move on. But Councillor Elmer, I can't see you on my screen. Did I hear you?
I was willing to put forward a second motion that we approve the double asterisks. And if we have that vote, then don't we have clarity?
I'd be happy with that. I was just trying to remember, and that's why I'd asked for Councillor Forgy to remind me. I don't remember why this came up in the first place. And even after the explanation, I still don't have a clear memory of discussing this. And I know it was a long time ago, but.
Well, my understanding is that you need this because there's a third category of things. Chris is going to explain it now.
Please do.
I love the kitty, by the way. If you notice the two asterisks, it's actually, I think it is, you guys can read it. I think it is asking for the inclusion of, it would read like this, something like this, by civil service law and this charter, and it would be, or by ordinance, after the word charter, so that it is another category in the definition of what is required.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It's like it's asking to add the words or by ordinance after the word charter.
Okay.
Civil service law and in charter or by ordinance.
Could we just clarify something? It says after each instance of the word charter. Does that mean all the way through the document?
I think just in this section is my understanding. But I want to pose a question, just playing devil's advocate. Would an ordinance not count as a quote unquote other applicable law?
Well,
I think that it would.
The language right now specifies civil service law and in this charter.
Right.
It doesn't say anything about other applicable laws.
No. But that single asterisk that we just voted on, we just voted to recommend to add that for the city council. And if that's the case, then the CPC wouldn't necessarily be an issue because we do have an ordinance for that. And I would argue that that is the other applicable law.
I'm nervous because the word charter may appear 1,000 times in this charter. And if we vote to change every instance, we may not know what we're getting into.
Okay. Well,
Chris,
you're probably right. I mean, it's in the title, right?
No, it's Phil. It's stated that after the word charter in this, what we're speaking about, not the whole charter. That's what it's referring to.
Right. And we can clarify that also if we need to. When we make the motion on the council floor, we can clarify that for this section, it would be charter or other applicable law. Because no, we would not want that in like the header of every single page.
right.
That'd be kind of funny, but not in a good way.
I'm actually on Councilor Gilmore's side. I think looking at the double asterisk in isolation, it seems like it's already been covered by the one that we voted.
Exactly, because the way it goes federal law, state
Yeah.
law, and then ordinances, and the
Federal
rule
law,
of
yeah.
importance when you're looking at prosecuting somebody for something or a wrongdoing. That's the way that it works. Federal supersedes state, state supersedes ordinances. So
Right.
it's
So
already
I'm-
taken care of.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that double asterisk is only important if we choose not to make the change recommended in the single asterisk.
There you
So
go.
maybe we should revisit the double asterisk if the full council does not approve the vote that we just made on the single asterisk. Does that make sense to folks?
Yep.
All right. Does anyone want to continue on page 18 or do we want to move on? And actually, while everyone is, so while I have your attention, do we want to set a time when we're going to be done so that folks can go and eat their dinner? Because I feel like we can go really far down the rabbit hole if you guys want to stay up all night with me.
Been a long day already. I would,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm willing to go more than a half hour.
Okay, so
I'm with Tim.
yeah.
Okay.
At the most.
All right. So let's see. Do we want to finish out? All right, let's try to end by 7:30. And if we get through the rest of section 3 before then, we'll just call that good. Does that sound fair?
Sure.
All right. Let's see. So we're moving on from page 18. Okay, so on 19, it was suggested to delete this phrase in writing since further along in the sentence, the word says by filing a written statement. That I'd be happy to take a statement or not. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'd be happy to take a motion.
I'll make that motion to accept the changes suggested by the Charter Review Commission.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, page 20. I don't see any changes unless someone wants to bring up a change. All right, page 21. Can you suggest the following language by secure electronic communication? Oh, yes. Okay, this one might actually take some time to suss out. So this might be the last thing we do tonight. So as it stands right now, if we have a special city council meeting, someone from the clerk's office has to drive to every councilor's house and deliver a printed notice in person. And it has been suggested that since many councilors are not necessarily home during the day, to receive that printed notice, it may be just as effective to get an email or a phone call. But there are pluses and minuses on both sides. So if we want to start the conversation, I'll say whoever wants to jump in.
I'll say that I'm a great supporter of secure electronic communication that allows a receipt. Seems like a good way to do it. Saves a lot of work. It's the modern way.
It is.
Chris has her hand up.
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. I just want to draw the committee's attention to going back to page 11. There is let me see, page 11. I'm sorry. That is section 2. Point 2-6 C2. It talks about special elections. And there's a footnote at the page that says, or by secure election communication that allows receipt confirmation. So if what happens here on this page references back to page 11, so there's an effect there on page 11 if what is voted here is listed on whatever is voted on this page will affect the writing on page 11.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Just so you know.
I don't see it on page 11.
Page 11, it says special meetings of the city council shall.
Oh, yeah,
It's- Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
then
we
you-
have to make sure.
right.
Yeah. So basically, it's our job to make sure that the language matches
Yes, correct.
and we don't have contradictions.
Correct. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
So Sheila, if I may, this is saying that we're going to do both, correct?
No, either.
No,
You're
it's
not
saying
going to
that we would
receive.
do.
Okay. I don't really care
Electronic
if I get a mail, because I never see it on my front door until like days later. And I've already attended the special meeting.
Right.
or notice. But here's my thing. We did at one time have a city councilor that didn't have internet. And how would
Yeah.
that person or persons be affected by not having internet? I mean, they didn't have it.
I agree. But I think that we take care of that where it says or by secure electronic communication. So maybe what happens is, at the beginning of the year, the clerk always sends us a communication saying, what is your phone number? They want the license plates for our vehicles so that we can get our parking passes, and we update all those things. So maybe there are instructions on that form where we say to the clerk, this is how I choose to be contacted. Because for me, it's if the clerk needs to get a hold of me immediately, she's better off calling me, because an email might sit for a day or two, right? Like, that's me personally. If a person doesn't have email, maybe they do need a hand delivered notice.
The way that I'm reading this, though, it says or by. All we're doing is add an or by. It's just this is saying that we're eliminating the hand delivered pieces of mail.
Oh, I see it
It
as
says
being
or by secure electronic communications. The
okay.
word or is in there. So it doesn't say we're not eliminating the first section. We are adding or by.
Right. It's one or the
The way
other.
that I'm reading it. The way that I'm reading it, you're getting both.
Right. No, and I agree with you. I think that my interpretation of this is that the counselor tells the clerk how they want to be contacted. Or maybe there's a power outage and that's part of the emergency. Right?
Yeah.
Counselor Dolan, do I see your hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So we're talking about the instance on page 21, but there's also an instance on page 11. That instance on page 11, to the best of my knowledge, has not been changed. So if we make this change here, we should make it in both places, correct?
Yes. And that is what Counselor Forgy just brought to our attention, is that we need to be cognizant of that if we do make a change.
I'm not seeing Ed's problem. Or means you get one or the other. And I think she was right that it's the kind of thing that the counselor would tell the clerk's office which they preferred. If it said and, then you get both. If it's or, you get one or the other.
Yeah, and I think I like it that way. And then the clerk also has some latitude, because if part of the emergency has, what if there's like a hurricane situation? We had Hurricane Irene, like what, 10 years ago, 11 years ago? And if that knocks out people's power and their internet, maybe it needs to be a hand delivered notice. Right? So I do like the option. Counselor Jarvis, are you concerned about that?
Nope. Nope. I was just bringing it up for discussion. That's all.
All right, thank you.
So just to troubleshoot this a little bit, I mean,
Yeah.
we're making some assumptions here about how it will go forward that are not in the language, and that's always a little bit of a dangerous game. There is the possibility, if we did have a counselor who does not have internet, it does not, nothing in this ordinance says that that read receipt must be returned as read. It only has to be sent. So that is a possibility that someone without internet, it could be sent to them and they would never receive it. And there's nothing in this charter change that implies that the clerk would have a system of each counselor choosing how they'd like to receive communication.
No, I think that is possible. I mean, someone can be on vacation overseas and maybe not have reliable access to internet, and certainly not have access to a notice stuck on their door. So there are always those possibilities. You might be right that maybe we need to write something in here that, a quorum of counselors have acknowledged receipt. That might fix this, because I mean, sometimes, if I get a phone call and I tell them, yes, I'm okay, I can attend at that time, that would count as me acknowledging receipt. If they deliver something to my door and I'm at work, I never acknowledged receipt. But as far as the charter is concerned, that's considered notice, even if maybe I'm on vacation for that week, right?
May I suggest that it has always been thus? When it was delivered by paper, there was always a chance you missed it. This does include a provision for allowing confirmation by receipt, so we're one step ahead of the existing situation. I don't see a problem with this change, and I'm willing to move that we accept it, both here and on section 2.6.
I'll
Okay.
second that if that's a motion.
Yes.
Great. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moving on. And I just have to say, like, a plug for the clerk's office that they don't have to, but they do their due diligence to make sure we're going to have a quorum. So, hooray for them. All right, section 3.8, temporary absence of the mayor. Okay, so there was that discussion to increase it from, okay, so I'm talking about just the single asterisk right here, because I know that there are other changes on this page. So just to be clear, the single asterisk says, after discussion, including reviewing the mayor's suggestions, the committee recommends that the period of days be increased from 10 days to 15 business days. Business days is defined as Monday through Friday, except for holidays. So did anyone want to discuss that, ask questions about it, pontificate, explain, what have you?
Can I ask why it was changed?
I don't remember why it was changed from 10 days to 15 business days.
That's 3 weeks.
I think it had to do with, like, it's kind of standard that a person would go on vacation. We think of a 2-week vacation. Oh, Councilor Forgy, please do.
I think the mayor put in some recommendations. I think this goes back to the mayor's participation in the language. And I think that I think this was brought forward, and the committee just discussed this based on what the mayor had sent to the charter committee.
Yeah, and I think, when we're talking about a 2-week vacation, we're probably talking about 10 business days, right? Depending upon whether there are holidays in there. So anything above and beyond a standard vacation that we think of would be considered like a quote unquote absence of the mayor. Because everyone needs their R&R time, right? So that was kind of my understanding of it.
But 3 weeks without a mayor is a long time.
Oh, no. This isn't 3 weeks without a mayor. This is 3 weeks where the mayor appoints someone to carry out day-to-day business. Like, the acting mayor doesn't get to make, like, grandiose changes in Greenfield, but they kind of just make sure that the trains keep running.
Again, the way it's written is that the mayor doesn't have to appoint anyone for 3 weeks. 3 weeks without a mayor. Do I have that wrong?
Well, I don't know if you have it wrong based on what's on the paper, but in practice, what we see is if the mayor's going to be gone for like a long weekend at the Cape, we get notices saying that the chief of staff is going to be filling in and like signing paychecks. And well, I don't know if they sign paychecks. I'm sorry. But I mean, the chief of staff fills in and just kind of takes care of some of those day-to-day things. They don't,
Yeah,
they
Phil,
don't do all the things that the mayor does, but they keep things going.
I think you have it backwards. I think if the mayor is gone for less than 15 days, they would appoint a an acting mayor. If they're gone for more than 15 days, there's something else in the charter that takes over.
I'm sorry, I must have misspoken.
Yeah, we're talking about appointments for short periods and how
Right.
long those short periods should be, not
Right.
over 3 weeks.
Right. So if we're talking about something small, like a 4-day weekend or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the
I'm sorry
next
if I
it's the next paragraph. The council president takes over if it's more than 15 days.
Right. Right. I'm
Or
sorry
10
if I
in this case.
misspoke. I'm sorry. So yeah, if it's a short period of time, the chief of staff kind of fills in and takes care of just day-to-day business. But if something happens, if the mayor wins the Powerball, they're gonna go to like Tahiti or something like that, then the council president takes over. And that's when we start talking about the vacancy in office. But for this, we're just talking about a very short period.
Right. Basically, what this is saying is that the mayor can appoint a temporary mayor for up to 15 business days instead of up to only 10. That's what this is stating.
Right.
Right. Okay. So, Phil, do you understand it now? That it's
I
not.
do understand it. Yeah.
Okay.
I still think 3 weeks is a long time. But okay. So if it's 15 days, less than 15 days, the clerk runs things if we change it. If it's more than 15 days, Penny runs the show.
Right.
No? Chris, you're shaking your head no.
Hang on. I don't want to deliberate because I'm not on this committee, so I really can't. I can only tell you historically that if you went on vacation for 2 weeks, you had an acting mayor. It was usually chief of staff, chief financial officer. You couldn't be away for more time than that at that particular point. When that threshold was met, it would go to the council president that would act temporarily. And I think as you go along in here, there's some other language that probably needs to be clarified. But everybody made sure, let me see, at least people made sure that they did not, let me do that you need to abide by what was in place. So I see where they want where the suggestion is 15 days. They're just looking to change and that temporary period of time that you could use for a long-term vacation is 15 days. And after that, you want to be back in place because you politically, you don't want the council president to have to act in your stead because that, presents other problems and everything else. But I think that there's more language coming up after this particular piece that you might want to look at as well, because it'll have bearing on this as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that maybe this might be a good stopping point because when we start talking about the mayor being gone, we're talking about making sure that, we're not saying the mayor's not allowed to go on vacation, but what we're saying is, what if some horrible thing happens and a person I think we've all had to deal with this in our workplaces where somebody has to, they have surgery, or maybe a new mother, goes on maternity leave because they give birth, or, there are a lot of reasons why a person may be absent from the office for a long period of time. And this is to make sure that Greenfield and our residents and our neighbors have someone who is just, keeping things on track. It's not something that we expect to happen all the time. So
And the
Whether
only,
you want to talk about 10 business days or 15 business days, I'll leave that up to you whether you think that that's an important number. It should be a small number. And one of the things we talked about on the committee was you don't necessarily want it to be the chief of staff, because at least the council president was elected by all of the voters and then was elected to be the president of the council by all of the councilors.
Right,
The chief of staff was just hired by a single person.
right.
So if you're going to have someone serve as the acting mayor long term, you want someone who the community feels like they have a lot of trust in.
right, which argues for not extending the period.
Speaking for the,
Whatever.
sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Speaking for the other perspective, I think in terms of continuity of government, it's always going to be easier and smoother to have someone who has experience in the executive branch. I mean, the council president stepping in after 10 days would have very, very limited knowledge of the day-to-day operation of the city and the bureaucracy that goes on in City Hall. So I would be inclined to keep it with the chief of staff as the mayor's designee for the 15 days.
You see that?
Oh, no. So for the 15 days, there's no suggestion that it would never be the chief of staff. It would, like, as Councilor Forgy said, it would either be the chief of staff or chief financial officer or whoever the mayor designates for that short-term period. It's for the long-term period where, yeah, office politics mean a lot, but when it comes down to brass tacks, it's really about the confidence of the voters. And if the voters feel like this person who was just pulled in, who might not even be a resident of Greenfield, right? Versus their council president, who is someone that at least they had a chance to elect. So that's the difference between the short term and the long term.
I mean, I suggest that if we discuss this in city council, we could have the mayor there and she could explain what her thinking is. I don't. After discussing it, I don't have a strong feeling either way. I like the idea of stopping here.
I also like the idea of stopping here somehow. Don't you love it when we all have something in common, guys? But yeah, so I think that this is a big enough discussion that maybe we come back to this one nice and fresh. We're going to have Councilor Gwynn with us, and he's going to have his own perspective. And we'll have a chance to sleep on it, right?
Good.
Oh, I don't think I'm gonna stay up and not get any sleep thinking on it.
Would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
All right. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, folks. Have a lovely night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good
Good night.
See you all soon.